our muscles. Imagine these big pillars running north-south. If I pick up a weight here like this, which muscle's contracting with tons of force? Extensor erector, right? Now, if I'm in neutral, the ability to tolerate that high load, visualize if these muscles contract from point A to point B, what do? They pull together. So the force is compressive in nature. So muscles create huge torques of force. If I pick up 100 pounds and I'm out here, I'm not going to go through the physics of this, maybe another class will do that, but what's the lever torque created, the moment of force created on my spine? What do you think that equals? 100 pounds out here, approximately, based on my length of my arms out here. I'm going to tell you it's probably 100 pounds out here is equivalent to over 1,000 pounds on the back, probably closer to 1,500. If I default into a rounded position here, or hyperextended, I've got a very unstable spine tolerating 1,500 pounds through the spine. Body's pretty freakish. You can tolerate it for a while. Give it a year or two, something's going to go. Body pump, any class where you see people starting to default out of neutral, even slightly hyperextension or rounding, that's a recipe for disaster down the road. I'm not picking on any class, I'm making that as an example. But I do look in classes quite a bit, and I see defaults all the time. Challenge of group fitness, how do you keep people in neutral when you yourself are trying to demonstrate, teach? It's hard. It's a very big discipline in class, which leads to the concept of you almost need 2 or 3 instructors in a class. 1 to teach, 1 or 2 to walk around and correct, to really do top quality group fitness class. It's a huge challenge. Torques on the spine, what was that? Of course, it's shear force. Shear is the other one. Shear is when one vertebrae slips forward on the other. It's like a slide. As soon as you fall out of neutral, the shear forces go way up, meaning one vertebrae is capable of sliding forward on the other one. When one vertebrae slides forward on another vertebrae, what takes the load? Let's see one segment. Can you see a disc? If this vertebrae shifts forward on the other, what's in between the 2 vertebrae? The disc. It slides. So if I took a sponge and I did this, squeezing it while under compression, what happens to that sponge eventually? Shred it. And then if I really want to shred it, how about if I let it come forward and I add a rotational torque? You're definitely going to rip the sponge. It's like a tire tread. Riding your tires on low air pressure and steering and turning a lot, the tire tread's going to give. That's really what it is here. So the neutral spine, especially under load, and especially when there's a rotational force, has to be maintained because you have hundreds, if not thousands of pounds of load going through the back, compressing it. If you don't maintain neutral, the shear force goes way up. Now, we can go through the physics if you guys wanted that. I find this stuff fascinating. Most people don't, so I'm a geek. There's several reasons why. One, architecturally, the neutral spine. Why do we build architectural structures with arches? Arches are just stable, sound structures. That's the way it is. That's why you'll see a lot of buildings that have architectural design of an arch. 2, muscular-wise, moment of force. The fiber direction when you maintain neutral, particularly the erector muscles, is 45 degrees when you maintain neutral. So if I put a huge load through my spine, if I want to prevent shear, I get a nice pull. If this vertebrae is sliding this way, I get a nice angle of pull with my muscles pulling that way to control the vertebrae slipping forward. Everyone understand that? As soon as I round, watch what happens to the alignment of the fibers. They go parallel in nature. See that? Now,
what's the distal? I mean, you're talking about the fibers coming off the
erector, yeah.
So what's the distal and what's the attachment?
The erector spinous process.
Mm-hmm.
It's the spinous process in many cases. Then you got we'll go through it. That's why I won't get the exercises today because we're going to cover the theory and technique. But it goes parallel. So here's a great analogy. Do we have the harness here? Yes, we do. Okay, I need a volunteer. If you any of you have taken the class here before, seen this, who's got a small waist size that can just step up a minute? Wendy, can you come up 1 second? I just gave you a nice compliment.
Yeah.
Okay, so Wendy is no longer Wendy. Wendy is L4. So she's a vertebrae, okay? Okay, I'm the erector spine, okay? So visualize someone flexes forward with a heavy load, and they maintain neutral. Okay, I'm the erector, she's L4. What's happening to L4 and L5? It's starting to come forward, there's a little bit of shear. Okay, so stay nice and tall, Wendy. Here's my angle of pull if the person maintains a neutral spine. Jeremy, can you stand up a minute? So Jeremy's going to do a hip hinge and maintain a neutral spine. Now she's L4 in his back, okay? See the neutral spine? Wendy starts to fall over. L4 is falling forward on L5. Do I have a good angle of pull? I'm the erector. Can I support L4 very well? Pretty good, huh? She's not going to tip. Okay. Bend over now, rounding your back. Here's my angle of pull. I'm the erector supporting L4. Someone stand in front of her, Sarah, real quick, because you're going to catch her. I'm the erector. This is my line of pull. Does that make sense? Because he just defaulted to a rounded back, so my angle of muscle direction changes by virtue of posture. Here's the angle. Fall forward. Okay. Visualize what just happened, L4 and L5. How many, so we're talking millimeters, but thanks, Mike. So L4 just went an additional 4 or 5, 6 centimeters further, not centimeters, excuse me, millimeters, 1 centimeters, you're dead. The vertebrae L4 just sheared forward on L5, and this happens through multiple levels. I'm just using L4 as an example. Several millimeters more than if you maintain neutral. Combine that with 1,500 pounds of pressure going through the spine because you might be lifting a weight. Can you see how you destroy your spine repetitively by not maintaining neutral? So we have to maintain this position whatever direction we're going. If we're going over our head, even if we're warming up, you know, external rotation. That's why last lecture is so important, because if you can maintain external rotation in your joint capsules, it gives you a more stable position to hold alignment. This is stuff we see in warm-ups all the time, right? See the blueprint versus poor blueprints. See the difference? Hip hinging swings. How often do we see this? Stiffen it, external rotation, lock the spine, shoulders back. Bam, bam, bam. Chin. Details. But those are the details between erector lining up in this direction, erector lining up in this direction. Joint capsule locking and tightening to stabilize the hips, pelvis, shoulder girdle, joint capsule slack, laxity in the joints. All these little things add up, and this is the blueprint we need to create more stability. And stability through the whole body. And it doesn't matter what end of the spectrum you're on. I mean, that's what I actually love about it, able to play both hats, PT and training. Sometimes the goal is simply, this guy's not hurt, he's strong, I need power. But if I don't follow these rules, I can never make him powerful. In rehab, someone's got a back injury, they come down to the gym the first time, they're going to always hurt their back unless they follow these rules. They just have to learn how to squat correctly again and pick groceries off the floor. The other end of the spectrum, the guy needs to learn to pick 500 pounds off the floor or to have a great vertical jump or move left to right with explosiveness. If he can't maintain his stability, keep the capsule tight, shoulders locked, he's losing power. He has a disadvantage on his opponent who can do these things and might be more skilled than him. So there's both ends of those spectrums you're looking at rehab performance. Local stabilizers. Okay, so we talk about what are the muscles, go 5 more minutes and we'll go to case study, maybe 7. What are the muscles, when we do research, we talk about local stabilizers and global stabilizers. More common in PT terminology, we hear about it. The local stabilizers are muscles that attach directly to the spine. We talk about the transverse abdominis, kind of wraps around directly, ties into the spine. You talk about the multifidi that go segment to segment in the back, and they just stiffen a little bit here. We talk about the quadratus lumborum. Then we talk about the global stabilizers, like the rectus abdominis in the front. We talk about the obliques. We talk about the lats that run like this, these big muscle groups. And the old school theory was stability, and some of us still utilize these old school theories, that we have to re-educate the transverse abdominis. We have to gently suck the navel in, and by virtue of doing so, we create this fascia wrap by sucking in. This is the research of Hodges, because he showed when people have back pain, the transverse abdominis deactivates. So you suck in gently, and you learn to keep that still and hold that in. And that's still not that uncommon in classes I hear in Pilates. Pull the navel to the belly towards your spine. Okay? Now, McGill will blast that out of the water and tell you that's totally incorrect. He'll say, if an Olympic strong guy went to put 500 pounds off the floor and he pulled his navel in gently, his back is going to buckle because there's no stability in doing that whatsoever. What you need is a co-contraction of multiple muscles working together. So in essence, it's like tightening your quads. Tighten the quads, which creates stiffness across your knee joint. They'll tell you, you brace, you push, you stiffen, like you're going to get punched, Kelly Starrett, who's doing a lot of work with Olympic lifters, would tend to agree a lot more than McGill than he would with Hodges on this. You brace, you stiffen, you get co-contraction of multiple muscles, multifidi, to control intersegmental mobility, lats, abs, then you move, and then the spine stays stiff. Now, I've used both ends of the spectrum. I used Hodges' work for 10 years. I'm really lucky and humbling in that sense that I got to use both for a long time. And we even had an ultrasound unit back, in PT for 10 years we used. We could actually look at the transverses. The ultrasound is like what you look for kids who are being born. We could look at the transverses and teach people to isolate. Pull the navel in, we go, you just fired your obliques, back off. So we re-educated the transverses very well for anyone with low back pain. Did that for 10 years. I used McGill's work probably for 10 years, combined with Olympic strongmen, guys like Pavlov, Starrett's work. Bracing, co-contracting, and I can tell you personally, by far the better results go, in my experience with McGill's work. In terms of teaching core stability, in terms of preventing back issues, in terms of creating powerful athletes, even with patients. Hodges' work didn't work for me, the ability of sucking in. Now, McGill will tell you the reason that doesn't work is you can't isolate muscle groups, particularly multifidi, which is very important. He says it's impossible, based on his research, to isolate the multifidi. If you simply co-contract, put your hands right under your rib and brace. Put your hand on your multifidi back here, off your spine. It's not necessarily all multifidi. On your spine, come off an inch. Put your hands in the front here. Brace the abs and see if you can co-contract the abdominals and feel this thumb push out. That's what Olympic lifters and athletes are trying to do when they stiffen their core. They're trying to create a co-contraction effect. Now pull your shoulders down and back at the same time. Get the lats kicking in and see if you can get multiple muscle groups to lock the spine down. That make sense? Okay, that's what works good for me. Trying to just isolate a multifidi or isolate a transversus, I find when I have them go into movement patterns, they can't maintain stability. McGill will also tell you that if you want to really stabilize the spine, as soon as you suck the navel in towards the belly, the force vector becomes here. So visualize this is a super tall building, and these are wires that are trying to stabilize. If you want a stable building, do you want the wires going like this, or do you want the wires coming out like this? You want some width, right? So by bracing, you create some width at which the wires and the cables can come in to stabilize at multiple angles. By sucking in, the wiring system's in tight. Then you get more slinkage, like this. Does that make sense? So bracing, McGill's work, / other strength Olympic guys, Pavlov and different guys, that's the difference in the spectrum. It's the strength power guys, and then the researchers like Hodges, and then finding a balance in between them. Generally though, I think the rule is, we're all in agreement with is, we have to prevent the core from moving. So if you want to suck in, and you can effectively keep your spine from moving, great. If you can do planks and suck in and tell your clients, okay, suck the navel in, and don't move your back, and they lift the leg up and they don't move their back, okay. But if they lift their leg up and their back defaults to an arch or a flex, or you load them with heavier weights and their back starts moving like a slinky, you haven't maintained stability. That part we all agree on in the industry. The back has to stay near neutral, the lumbar spine particularly, okay? And generally we also agree that local stabilizers are slow twitch in nature, so we stabilize with static positions, planks, okay? Things like this. The other muscle groups are more explosive in nature, so we can do more dynamic, lat stuff. Lats are more fast twitch, so we can be more powerful with those muscle groups while we stay static with the local stabilizers. That gets a little bit more techy, and so I don't try to go too much into those details. More importantly, keep the back still. Use your choice of whatever you prefer to tell people. I prefer to teach people to brace. I even play with different concepts of teaching them how to brace. I like this one a lot. Take a band, wrap it around here, teach them external rotation. Now tighten your core and feel the stiffening. And you'll feel the band stretch as you tighten. This is what the fascial system should do. And you'll feel the band tighten. You kind of get a feel of this is what should happen when you brace. You lock. I'm using moderate force. The breathing pattern is what? Is it? Try maintaining stability and stiffness, breathing like that. Very difficult to do. It's like a gymnast. Think of a gymnast doing an iron cross. Watch what they do when they're on the rings. You see them do this? Watch their breathing. They can't go, because if they do that, what happens to their ability to maintain the contraction here? If you can't maintain it, then their spine defaults into an arch or to a flex. So we have to teach breathing patterns. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the because as soon as you blow all the air out and you inhale, it's very difficult to maintain stiffness in your core. So you're going to default slightly. So can you maintain the stiffness regardless of what you're doing? If you're doing chopping patterns, and this is what we'll cover next session. Can you maintain the stiffness? Glutes. Or how often do we see this? This, right? Not that uncommon in the gym. But look at all the energy links that are being created. External rotation, internal glute. That's it. Shallow breathing. If you lose focus, think of the gymnast on the iron cross. What would the guy do? He maintain the stiffness while he's breathing shallow. Stiff. Is that too much for one day? Case study? Okay, so next session, what I'm going to do with you guys is I'm going to cover all the antis, the anti-preventing extension of the lumbar spine, the anti-rotation of the lumbar spine, the anti-lateral side bend. What are progressions, regressions, how can we use them? And how can we use them in a PT setting and combine them into a training room setting? Okay, Emil's going to take it from here and help out with Shannon. Shannon, we'll get to get you up here.
Yeah, before we get started, I wanted to take this time, because we're all together, to talk about something that we're really excited about in the biomechanical eval screen that we're doing out of sports medicine. The potential for the club, the reason I'm really excited about working here is we have all these great professionals that all know what they know, but are all in the same place. So we have the opportunity to really bring the departments together and produce a product that is unique in Aspen and probably on a bigger scale than that. But we haven't ever really realized that potential. And so the biomechanical eval screen is kind of the first step in that process. In sports medicine, we have 7 clinicians who all went to school for 4, 5, 6 years to get their degrees. And they are the academic experts in the field of movement. The trainers, you guys are kind of like the field agents. And we've never put the two together for some reason. And we definitely should. So what we're doing is we're launching a biomechanical eval screen that's going to be sold sometimes sold in conjunction with 2 follow-up personal training sessions. So we're aiming at this at pretty much any clientele, but anybody that's signing up for gym membership especially. We'd like to sell this package, have them come in for a biomechanical eval screen, and then 2 follow-up sessions with a given personal trainer. We're going to actually offer the package 3 ways. So one is as a package with gym membership, meaning the client pays for it, they have their screen, and then 2 follow-up sessions with one of you guys, which is a chance for you to sign a client. The other way we're going to do it is if you guys have a client who's struggling to figure out their movement patterns, we're going to make it available to that client at a pretty good discount. And then the last one is anybody else. If anybody from the community wants to come in and have the screen done, it's available to them as well. The benefits, I think in the short term for you guys, it's a shot at a new client. They're gonna come in, see the PT, and have their 2 follow-up training sessions with you. That's what's guaranteed, but depending on how it goes, you definitely have the opportunity to sign a new client. In the medium term, it's a referral source for us in sports medicine. You guys are going to build relationships with the PTs and the chiros. You're going to see how good they really are at figuring this stuff out. And when you have somebody that you think would benefit from a session, definitely send them our way. We definitely want that exposure in our department. And in the long term, you guys working in conjunction with the therapist is going to raise your level of knowledge. Also going to raise their level of knowledge of what goes on in the gym, so that the whole club is really escalating in terms of the product we provide, which once again, we are the only place in town that has a sports medicine department and a gym, and excellent trainers in that gym. And we need to put it together. It's a totally unique product, and it's something that should be really successful. For today, the case study today, Shannon's gonna, I think we all know Shannon from the boutique. She's been a sport and volunteered to do this, but her situation ties in closely with core stability, which is the topic of today's lecture. And we had Pete, actually, Dr. Pete, raise your hand. I think you guys all know him, but he did an eval with her. In the second page, so when the PT does an eval, they're going to produce two things for you. One is going to be raw data, which is, I believe, the last page, and two is a letter, both to you and to the client, outlining kind of the findings and what they think you should focus on in the two sessions. So Pete did the eval, he's written it up, you guys all have a copy. Jeremy's going to come do the case study as the trainer. So he's going to take what Pete found in the eval and really spend 2 sessions figuring out how to focus on those things with Shannon. So you guys want to get started? Cool.
So, you could probably spend an hour on eval I did with Shannon and explaining what I found. So we're going to kind of skip through just so we can get for, so you come on up. Skip through to what the major findings were so Jeremy can kind of get on the rehab. So Shannon was training for a half marathon this summer, right? And she eventually competed in it, but while she was training, she developed some left-sided medial knee pain, kind of down through here. Eventually some outside knee pain as well, and then eventually developed into low back pain on the left side. So from kind of the biomechanical point of view, what we're looking for is any energy leak or inefficiency from a repetitive motion like running every step, where she'd start putting wear and tear on here. It wasn't a major macro trauma like ski accident where it blew out the inside of the knee. So we're looking for repetition that causes problems. So why don't you keep your shoes off? So the evaluation incorporated just looking at a posture number 1, and we look at, so stand sideways. So let's come off the mat just a little bit. So I want everyone to notice the increased arch right here, as she kind of stands with her knees buckled a little bit. Everyone see that? Yes? All right, now face the other way. That way. And then we're going to look at her feet here, and her arches are collapsed on the rear foot on both sides. So this is a standing neutral posture. I won't go into the other details of her posture, but that then gets accentuated when she is in motion. So just kind of walk towards the wall a little bit. So as she's walking, you can kind of see how her knees drop inside. So to exaggerate what's happening with Shannon, every time she's walking, and then it's even worse on running, her foot externally rotates because her arch is collapsed. Her knee drops medially, and then her whole body rotates this way. So she ends up with this weird kind of gait when she's walking, right? So, not like that. So come on forward. So a lot of that starts from, so I look at it from the ground up, from the foot mechanics, how that translates into to her running. But with her core being weak as well, and we did a few tests to determine that, with the core being weak as well, the low back starts shifting to the shearing forces on the disc, on the facet joints, which are the posterior elements of the spine, creating muscle imbalance, muscle tension. Eventually her hip has to actually rotate in the socket, and it rotates kind of internally. So as you roll this way, her femur rotates forward in the socket, the tibia also rotates, so she gets all these forces through here and eventually wear and tear on the inside of the knee. So the solution for this is to actually restore this whole kinetic chain from the foot all the way up into the core. So the core has to be strong first, the extremities move around the core, which is the leg and the foot. When we tie all this together, the knee pain starts to go away, and then she can start running again. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what we determined. Pass that on to Jeremy, and then we want him to stabilize the core first in a static way, and then move on to the extremities and more dynamic motions.
So I think what I initially thought was, Bill, you were going to go over some of these exercises beforehand today, right? But you'll go over those next time.
Yeah, we'll cover these.
So if everybody looks at this page, where it's the letter to the trainer, there's a kind of a few things here. The first 2 sentences talks about focusing on midline stability, and then as she demonstrates competence, you move on to more dynamic things. So what we're going to go over right now is just kind of the first part of that, midline stability. So as Pete mentioned, we talked a lot about the foot, the knees. Before you can even attempt any of that, you have to make sure she has good core control. And as Bill mentioned, over here, with a lot of those muscles being slow twitch, a lot of the exercises you're going to start with are things like planks, things that are not dynamic, they're more postural exercises. So with her, some of the things we look at with the, right here in this end of the second sentence where it says TA, obliques, QL, multifidus. You can kind of hit all these things with planks, side planks, bird dogs, things of that nature, okay? So the first thing we would check, we would teach her core stabilization and standing, as Bill taught, just co-contracting the abdominal muscles and the back muscles. Then we talk a lot about, like if we do in HIIT class, about moving from the hips as opposed to the spine. So we teach her how to move, just sparing the back, moving the hips, as opposed to moving in the spine. And everybody, I think, has probably been in at least that HIIT foundation class in here, right? Kind of comfortable talking about that? Okay. Once we got that down with her, we'd start with things like, let's start with plank and side. Let's start with side plank first. That's going to get your QL, your glute med. And so let's go into side plank. We'll do about 30, 45 seconds first. We'll have you on your elbow, top foot in front, bottom foot behind, and you want your body pretty much perpendicular to the ground. Let's lift this arm up. Now what you're looking for is any buckling, collapsing of the hips towards the floor, any rotation. Obviously you have somebody with a shoulder problem as well. This might be more difficult. We can talk about rolling this back. You can also do it standing, using the TRX, or standing against a bent table. So as you're starting with this, you will want to make sure they can do things like a side plank before you would ever think about doing the standing dynamic exercises. Does that make sense why? I got that? Now, any discomfort in the back, shoulder, etc.? Relax. For shoulder, you can have them use that opposite arm, try to lock the shoulder down before they come up. If you can't get it that way, you'll move to standing, kind of leaning against the wall. Okay? Let's see the other side. Things you'd be looking for here as a trainer are difficulties one side opposed to the other. Okay?
How do you want her pelvis oriented? Totally stacked?
For the most part. You can also actually try to get into some purposeful rolling down the road to hit different parts of the abdominal wall. But at the beginning, when it's stacked, let's put that foot back there. And again, you're looking for more difficulty on one side versus the other, okay? Let's go to your hands and knees. One that you see people, PTs, trainers doing all the time is the bird dog, the opposite arm leg. Let's stop for a second. You want your knees under the hips, hands under the shoulders, and you want your body roughly parallel to the floor. So let's bend the elbows a little bit so that you're roughly parallel with the floor. Now what you're looking for is you're going to remind them to brace the core, okay? What you want to avoid with this exercise is extension like Bill talked about, hip hiking. So this is an exercise and also a test to see how much core stability they have and how they can hold this position. So you'll have them take left arm, right leg out, and hold. As you can see, she's immediately kind of buckling there a little bit. Let's see the other side. So you would never progress, in her case, to any kind of standing dynamic stuff until she can do this with great control, holding for roughly 5 to 6 seconds each side. Bill, you want to add anything to that?
No.
Great. Does that make sense to everybody? Questions about this? So I know you see lots of people doing this in the club, and you might wonder why they're doing it.
I have just kind of a general question. Obviously, in the long term, focusing on movement quality is way more beneficial than giving someone a workout.
Sure.
So how do you address the people? How do you keep people toned down to where they should be? How do you keep them enticed with remedial exercise?
I think it's a great question. I think as trainers, one of the biggest challenges when you're used to working with healthy, fit people as opposed to somebody in a rehabilitation phase is keeping them excited. And a challenge for you guys is going to be not to let them progress until they're ready, okay? So to hit his question, you've got to find ways to keep them entertained without letting them progress too quick. Does that make sense? Ways to do that are, you can give them a few core stability exercises they have trouble with, then throw in a few things that they find easier to get at. They give them a burn or whatever they're looking for, but always bring it back to these sound fundamental movements. Relate it to their daily activities. With the squat, relate that to getting in and out of the car, in and out of a chair, picking up things, etc. And just try to relate it to their problem and their normal daily activities as much as you can.
So maybe kind of break the workout up into different segments where you know, this part of the workout might not be fun, but it's really beneficial. Then the next part,
as long as you can do that without introducing bad habits into the parts where you're not focusing on core stability or what have you. The thing to keep in mind is it's only the first few sessions that you should be focusing on this kind of stuff. They should get this fairly quickly. Then you can progress to things like standing, which I'll go through more next time. I know you guys got to leave. But take home point is they've got to get this stuff down. You've got to see good core stability and control before you can let them progress to moving around and jump, especially jumping around. And there is a progression, which I think Bill's going to go through next time. But you got to keep in mind that there is a progression. You can't just bring somebody in, throw them down into plank for 30 minutes and then say, okay, let's do some squat jumps. Just remember, we got to build slowly, and you have to really keep an eye on good form through the whole progression, and don't feel uncomfortable stopping them from progressing if they're not ready for it. Don't thank you for it later. Make sense?
I've got one more thing, or two more things to say. One is part of the eval program is our desire to really open our doors to you guys and encourage you to ask questions and deal with the PTs and deal with the chiropractors as much as you need to. I mean, that's really, it's a long-term investment on the club's part in that the club isn't going to make any money on this program, but they're hoping that you guys learn so much from it that in the long run you make more money. The second thing that I really wanted to touch on was how much we appreciate you guys coming. It does go notice that you're here. It's definitely, this is supposed to be the venue where we come together and learn things and invest in ourselves as a club. So thank you guys for showing up, and it definitely goes notice.
Thank you.
If anybody's interested, I'd be happy to go through like a whole progression, take an hour and kind of go through what it looks like on our own time, because I didn't really have time here today, but more than happy to do that.
How much is the package?
So we're going to sell it to members for $225.
New members coming in, it would be one biomechanical eval hour and then 2 sessions with a trainer for $225. And then for existing members, if they want to get into the sports medicine department, if you want to take your clients, it would be an hour and that would be $110. And then anybody coming from the outside would be $130 for the biomechanical eval.
And then what about the rest?
That's a good question.
What was the question?
You said what about for us?
To do an eval on yourself? I think you can just come in.
I would encourage a trade if that's an option, and then I know that the PTs and everybody would be interested in figuring something out. So I don't want to put a set price on that.
Well, what we should probably do.
I have a client that I would want to do it, but I want to do it too.
No, well, so the other part is you guys are totally welcome to attend the evals. If we do it
On them.
yeah, come shadow. The other thing we can definitely do is set up one eval. I know Devin's already shadowed one and thought it was great. Now he wants to do one and make it open to all you guys so you can see what it's about. Granted, they're all a little bit different based on who's doing it, but you always will walk away with the same message.
It's an hour long with the evals an hour?
Yeah, hour-long eval.
And just scheduled with you guys?
Yeah, I see it.
I know Dirk and I have been talking about this for months now, and just to kind of piggyback on what Emil said, thanks so much for coming, and I think it's a cool learning opportunity for all of us. And if you PTs don't know personal trainers or vice versa, please, initiate the introduction, and let's start to get these 2 departments working a little bit more cohesively. It'd be great.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome, thanks y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.